Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Monday night, I'm in the office. I got the laptop open. I don't have the snub nose with me. Oh, this thing's heavy. I got the Mac 10. And I got, of course, 45 bullets in it, but I don't keep hollow points in the Mac 10. It's pointless. Another pointless thing to have on this bad boy is a laser sight. Pointless, but I got it. So might as well put it on there. Let's get into it. Get yourself in the mood for some mafia stories. Talking about the Los Angeles Syndicate. Got my Vato hat. We're about to go on a mission. Our main character, Simon Castro, he is out of college. He's decided not to pursue the NFL or his football career through the advice of his father and his friends, and it just felt like his best path to take. And he's going to join the mob, the Los Angeles crime family. But first he has to go through his initiation, and he's hanging around as an associate with his Uncle Frank, who's also a made guy in the LA crime family. He showed up in the last episode. Simon showed up at Uncle Frank's bar. You can go check out the last episode. We do it every Monday. And now him, Simon, our main character, our hero, and his Uncle Frank, who he respects and loves very much, are going out to collect some money. So get yourself ready. Let's just jump into it. This might be a little bit longer than the last video because this is a fairly long scene. We're just going scene by scene through this entire novel. And when we're done with this novel, I got 2 more. So let's get into it. Frank had a sweet Eldorado convertible Cadillac. He always drove the coolest cars. The paint was flawlessly perfect in that metallic shark blue tone that I love, contrasting with an amazingly bright white leather interior. It had large white walls that stayed looking brand new all the time. He would blast the AC with the windows open, making it pretty useless. But it was his ride, so we followed his rules. I enjoyed driving around in his land yacht, floating along the bumpy, potholed streets of the West Side. Frank always thought the cops were following him, so he kept telling me to make turns that seemed like they took us around the block in circles. He would tell me to go up a hill just to head right back down a different street. Finally, we pulled up to the first address on his list, which was right off Pico Boulevard and La Brea. Frank leaned over and said, "Okay, Simon, first lesson, listen up. Always get out of the car when you park and come around to my side and open the door for me. Don't just sit there like an idiot waiting for me to make the first move. Get your ass out of the car." A request that I thought was silly, but I remembered what my father told me. The answer to every question is always yes, sir. So I hopped out, ran around the long end of the car and opened his door. He stepped out of the car and said, "Now go open the front door of the bar for me. Let me enter completely, and then you walk in behind me. Capiche?" The place was a shithole, with a broken sign out front that read "The Booze Barn." Frank slowly walked in the bar, which was dark and filled with cigar smoke. He headed straight off to the office in the back. I followed him down a little hallway past the restrooms, trying to look as mean as I could, even though the bar was empty. Frank swung the door to the back office open to find our first deadbeat inside. In that small little disheveled office sat a man named Ronald White, the bar owner, and a longtime bookie who paid up to Frank in order to operate on the West Side. He had not paid his percentage the last couple of months. My uncle was angry about it, and it was time for Ronald to pay up. As we rushed into the office, unannounced, Frank said, "You see how this works, Ronnie, my man? Do you see what happens to dumb fucks like you who take advantage of my good faith?" Ronnie looked up in surprise at Frank and put his hands out in front of him to defend himself as he yelled out, wait, no, Frank, no." Frank's eyes lit up like he was the devil himself. My fat uncle moved faster than any of the linebackers on USC. He attacked Ronald White like a raging bull. He was swinging his fat, stubby arms like a windmill. He hit Ronald in the face twice with a 1-2 punch combo that Muhammad Ali would have been proud to see. Ronald was a tall, skinny beanstalk of a man who could not take a punch at all. He fell to the floor like a kid in grade school, curling up in a fetal position and hold his hands over his head for cover. Frank kicked Ronald in his back and then in the side of the head. Every time Ronald moved, Frank delivered another kick, targeting the most sensitive areas of his body to inflict the most pain. Ronald held his head with his hands and screamed out in terror, "Please, Frank, stop! I have your money, please stop!" Ronald was crying like a little girl, sobbing, in fact. I tried not to laugh because I had never seen a guy cry before like that. I almost felt bad for him, but I remembered that we were doing a job, and like my uncle explained to me, violence was all part of this game. Frank got tired out pretty quick and stopped his attack. He was out of shape and out of breath. He said to me, sweating and panting, "Simon, go get me a bottle of Big O's whiskey from behind the bar, will you?" I shrugged my shoulders and gave a chuckle as I left the office to find a bottle for my uncle. Frank helped Ronald up off the floor, brushed him off, and set him back in his chair. Frank said, "You see, Ronnie boy, you brought this on yourself. You must have known this was coming your way. Now give me what you owe me, or I'll start up again on you." Ronald wiped off the blood from his face with his hand and said, "Hey, you're a fucking jerk, Frank. You didn't have to break my fucking nose, you asshole. I think I lost a tooth also." Frank laughed at Ronald's complaints. I stood in the doorway with the bottle of booze in my hand and said, "Here you go, Frank." Frank took the bottle, tore the paper off the top with his teeth, and opened it. He took a long swig and then handed it to Ronald. Ronald took a swig and grabbed his jaw in pain as he swished the booze around in his bloody mouth. He winced and then spit into the metal wastebasket next to his desk. He stood up and walked over to his safe in the corner of the office. With a quick 3-number combination, he popped the door open and grabbed a white envelope full of cash. Ronald extended his trembling hand to my Uncle Frank, who eagerly snatched the envelope from his blood-stained fingers with an evil smile. Frank patted Ronald on his back and said, "Thanks, old friend. Say hi to your wife and kids for me." Ronald spat out some more blood into his trash can, along with another tooth, and replied, "I'm sorry, Frank. You know this won't happen again, I promise." We left back down the hallway as Frank stuffed the envelope into his back pocket. He yelled over his shoulder back to the office, "We own you, Ronnie. Next time I'll take a tow." I opened the door to the bar for my Uncle Frank to leave, and I said, "A toe, Frank? Ouch. How do you cut someone's toe off?" Frank stopped outside the door and gave a smile. He said, "I always try to make a very specific and odd threat with my bookies who need tuning up. I want them to remember my warning. It helps to pick a body part and say you'll break it off or take it off or cut it off or something. They need to understand that the consequences will get worse the next time that you come by. Right now, that scared, skinny man can only think about his precious toes. He's probably wiggling them as we speak. Ronnie's going to think about his feet all week long and he won't be late with my money the next time, I promise you that. Oh, one more thing, Simon. Remember what I tell you. We don't make idle threats in this life. A real gangster has to show his muscle once in a while and can't just run his mouth. So if he's late again, you will need to get a set of those handheld shears that the landscapers use for cutting branches. Trust me, a toe will pop right off like butter. We walked over to the car and I opened the door for him. I said, shears? What the fuck are shears? You mean like pliers or something? Frank scoffed back at me. No, don't use pliers. That'll only mash the toes up. I'll show you. We have a toolkit for body parts behind the bar. Just ask the old man. I replied, hey Frank, I meant to ask you about that guy. Who is that old bartender working for you? Frank replied, you've met him before, a long time ago, when you were just a little boy. He used to be a big-time hitman for the family back in the old days. He was the Don's #1 go-to hitter. That old guy, he's been through so much war, more than anybody, and he's lucky to be alive, in my opinion. I jumped in the driver's seat and shut the door softly. The car started up with a purr, like it was a happy kitty. Frank opened his door, looked over to me and said, you see, Simon, we don't charge these guys much to operate on our turf, but we never let anyone off the hook when it comes to paying up. We don't play this game for points. This ain't football. We play for money. We play for keeps. Pico Boulevard was dead with no traffic. I smashed on the pedal and sped off. Frank looked over to me as he turned up the radio as loud as it could. His favorite song by the Beatles, Helter Skelter, was on. All right, I'm going to stop here. We have more to go. Thanks for watching.